In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful. Hello everybody, hope you are doing great. You're watching FOADEBATE. Today, I'm truly honored to welcome back Larry Johnson. His presence brings a wealth of knowledge, and I couldn't be more fortunate to have him here with us again. Thank you so much for joining us, Larry, and I truly appreciate your time.
Thank you, Foad, for the invitation.
You're welcome. Today, we aim to discuss predictions about future wars and America's role in them. Considering the rapid changes in the global landscape, understanding potential conflicts and the role of so-called powers like the United States is crucial. This is especially relevant as some believe that America is inherently warlike and has designed the strategies for wars in which it has not directly participated. Do you believe in it or not?
If you judging on the history of the last 70 years, one could easily conclude that. The United States seems hopelessly addicted to war. There was a pop song in the 1980s by Robert Palmer called "Addicted to Love." Well, the United States certainly is not addicted to love. It seems to be addicted to killing and murder and mayhem, unfortunately. Instead of really being a voice for peace, it has been just the opposite. And I think one of the reasons contributing to that is that in all the wars that the United States has been involved with, or conflicts, since the end of World War II, and even including World War II, the United States has rarely suffered significant casualties. We haven't paid a price in blood. Unlike the Russians, the Russian people and those other now countries that were part of the Soviet Union, they paid a horrific price in World War II, as did China. And when you look at China and Russia, both those countries have actually avoided going to war in other countries. Some will cite the Soviets going into Afghanistan in the 1980s. Again, that was provoked in part by the United States, but it has not been a sort of a policy, a central part of Russian foreign policy or Chinese foreign policy to invade other countries. As for the United States, whether it's Vietnam, or Syria, or Afghanistan, or Libya, or Iraq, or the former Yugoslavia, attacks on Serbia, Panama. Look at what we're doing right now off the coast of Venezuela. So, yeah, I think we're sort of addicted to war. We don't pay much of a price, and there's money to be made. The various corporations that supply weapons, services to the now Department of War, formerly known as the Department of Defense. Their shareholders are very happy. Been
Right.
profitable.
Right. And many believe that America's recent interventions and warmongering efforts stem from a decline in its hegemony. Do you agree with this analysis?
I don't think they're connected necessarily. However, there's no denying that the leadership role of the United States, both financially and politically, is eroding dramatically. So this loss of hegemony, weighs in the background. But candidly, I think most Americans don't realize that the halcyon days of the United States are over. That the time in which we really were the behemoth on the world stage, it could dictate and control outcomes. That's coming to an end. It was all sort of a harbinger of it, and what happened in the Red Sea with the Houthis.
Yeah.
The Houthis aren't exactly what you'd call a global power, and Yemen is a poor country. It's a small country. And yet it stood up to all of the bullying and attacks of the United States, to the point that the U.S. finally declared victory and left, because the reality was we were not capable of sustaining a military operation there. We just, we cut and ran, to put it in those terms.
Exactly. Regarding conflicts in the Middle East, or better to say in West Asian region, particularly in the issue of Palestine and also the recent war between Iran and Israeli regime, what role do you assign to the United States?
This is so enmeshed, intertwined with religious belief, and even I think a lot of Americans are not even conscious of it. We hear this expression, Judeo-Christian values. And yet, when you look at what is the view of Judaism with respect to Jesus and his mother, Mary, the Christians describe as the Virgin Mary, the Jewish view is dismissive. The Jesus is a nobody, basically. Yeah, and this is just some sort of heresy by non-Jews. Whereas within Islam, both Sunni and Shia, as I understand it, Jesus is revered as a man of God. He's not necessarily accepted as the Messiah, but my understanding is his mother Mary is, I think, highly venerated within Islam. So you can make the case that actually a lot of the antagonism towards Islam that has been generated by Jewish propaganda designed to, because the reality is Christians and Muslims have more in common with each other from a religious standpoint than Christians and Jews. But a lot of evangelical Christians have been sold the lie that, if you bless Israel, you'll be blessed, and if you curse Israel, you'll be cursed. That's a lie. But, it's been perpetuated in such a way that it dominates U.S. policymaking. And we've seen just in the last 6 months, when Tucker Carlson did his interview with Senator Ted Cruz, Cruz maintained that, we're doing what we're doing with Israel because the Bible tells us to. And what Tucker said, what part of the Bible is that? And Cruz had no idea. It's just, he's been brainwashed. Similarly with the current U.S. ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, same thing. So it's something I've become, I grew up in it, and sort of, when you're surrounded by something and it's so common, you don't necessarily recognize what it is. But when you get into where you can finally step back and take an objective look at it, you realize that it's been a big lie sold to Christians, evangelical Christians in particular. And so that allows the United States to be basically a puppet of the Zionists, and as such, we enable them. But I don't just blame the U.S. alone, because other countries in the world are standing back and doing nothing. I fault in particular China and Russia and India as three countries that if they would simply impose an economic boycott on Israel, and I think they could compel change and alter the policy. They haven't. And similarly, Turkey. Turkey probably is the single most important country, and by virtue of claiming to be a strong adherents of Islam, yet Turkey continues to do business with the Israelis, preferring making money over upholding human rights. So the United States is a big culprit in this, but it's not the only one.
Right. All right. In parentheses, I'd like to ask, how likely do you think another war between Iran and Israel is? And what would be the role of the US?
I don't, Israel would like to have a war, sort of. Let's call it the crazies in Israel, the ultimate Zionists. But I think there's still enough sanity left within the Israeli military. They realize that any attack on Iran would elicit a devastating response, something they didn't even see during the 12-day war, and that the very existence of Israel would be called into question. So I think they're not going to go down that path. They took their shot on June 13th when they launched this attempt to assassinate all of the Iranian leadership. It failed, and I think neither the Zionists nor the Americans in the Trump administration believed possible that Iran could retaliate as quickly as it did. It was like within 6 to 8 hours, Iran was retaliating with missile strikes. So this, I've heard repeated predictions that Israel's going to do it. I don't think they will, simply because there are still some sane people that understand they could be signing the death sentence for the nation of Israel if they do that.
You're right. Let's jump to the global implications. How can we analyze the impacts of future wars and American interventions on the global order and international relations? Could these interventions lead to fundamental changes in the balance of power?
Well, we are witnessing the birth of a new global order, through BRICS, with Russia and China in the lead. China is the dominant industrial power in the world, and they are the transformations taking place in that society are not understood here in the United States. The United States still labors under the belief that we are the number one dominant country, that we're the wealthiest, we're the strongest, we've got the best and brightest and scientists. And it's simply not true. Historically, it is true that when you've got a breakdown in this kind of international order, when the dominant power, when there was a time when Greece was the dominant political force in the world, and then they fell apart with their decline, and war and conflict accompanied that. The same with Rome, the fall of Rome, the Roman Empire, and I'd say probably the same with the Babylonian Empire. So let's call it the U.S. empire is coming to an end, and it has both economic and political implications. The U.S. ability to control events in the world is going to become less, not more. And we're then left with what are the attitudes, beliefs, approaches of Russia and China. Even though they are portrayed in Western propaganda as these ravenous imperialist powers seeking to conquer the world, the fact of the matter has been just the opposite, looking at their behavior, their conduct over the last 40 years. There was, what was it, 46 years ago, China did invade Vietnam, or launched a military attack on Vietnam, and because Vietnam was attacking Cambodia. But apart from that, China, has not been out conquering other states. And even in the history prior to that, China was not an aggressive imperial power. And the same can be said for Russia. Russia has tried to consolidate control along its borders, but it's faced more attacks from outside than it has been launching attacks against others. So they bring to it let's call it a less combative, a less militaristic approach to the world. And And we could say the same with respect to Iran. Iran has not been an aggressive military force. The war with Iraq was provoked again and incited by the United States, encouraging then Saddam Hussein to carry out the attack. And the United States actively supported Iraq during that war, providing intelligence and providing the chemicals that were used to manufacture chemical weapons. So yeah, we're in an era of tremendous change, and right now the United States generally doesn't recognize that it's that it's losing, that we're in a decline. When we come to recognize that decline, we might lash out in anger, but I think that we'll find we have limited capability.
What do you mean by that? Limited capability of what?
Say that again. I couldn't.
About the limited capabilities, you said something about that.
Yeah.
What do you mean by limited capabilities?
It's lost its the United States has lost its industrial base. During when World War II broke out, the United States was the dominant industrial power in the world. Number two, interestingly enough, was probably the Soviet Union. But the United States was able to produce ships, aircraft carriers, tanks, airplanes, whatever, in huge volumes.
Right.
And we actually played a pretty important role supplying the then Soviet Union with planes and other and vehicles to help keep them in the war early on until because the Soviets had to relocate a lot of their industrial base that was in places like the Donbass in Ukraine and move it to the east of the Ural Mountains. So they lost a year to 18 months of downtime before they were able to reconstitute and start manufacturing. Well, the U.S. doesn't have that ability anymore. We've outsourced so much of our industrial capability that we can't just flip a switch, ramp up, and start producing weapons, armaments, and the other supplies that would be necessary to conduct a war. So Russia has an industrial base. China has the most impressive and comprehensive industrial base of any country. It's really without precedent in history. That's where the United States would be a poor third or fourth place finisher in that race.
And you believe that in Venezuela we will have no war?
What the United States has done by deploying this military force, and you got ships, right, and got Marines on board ships, and they've got the bow like this. Now you can only hold that for so long. Anybody that's ever shot a bow knows that after about 20 seconds, your arm starts shaking, your muscles get fatigued
and won't release.
Yeah, that's the United States. We've got this bow cocked, but we're not sure we want to fire it. And because if we do fire it, the odds are very high that it's going to have severe negative consequences for the United States. Yeah, we'll kill a large number of Venezuelans, but there is no way the United States will be able to pacify that country in any way. And again, one of the justifications that it's being sold to Americans initially was, oh, it's a narco state, narco terrorists. Well, that's not true. But now they're highlighting, it's aligned with Iran and China and Russia, so therefore it's a threat. The U.S., if they carry out military action against Venezuela, I think it's likely to Venezuela. Let me put it this way: Venezuela is a more powerful military and a much more difficult target than was Yemen and the Houthis.
Exactly.
And you saw how much trouble the United States had taking on the Houthis.
Exactly. Right. For the last question, what role do you see international alliances such as NATO playing in these conflicts?
They are increasingly irrelevant. Again, they're plagued with the same problems that the United States has: a declining industrial base, weak economies, and those two factors alone argue against them being able to do anything of any consequence militarily. The looming defeat of Ukraine by Russia also impacts on NATO, because the war in Ukraine is a proxy war for NATO, and the tactics and technology, armaments, have been shown to be not as effective as NATO once believed. And Russia, in particular, has a tremendous technological advantage over NATO in terms of hypersonic missiles and other new technologies that have come online. So I think we'll witness the death of NATO. I think it's on its way to extinction, in my view, and rightly so. It is. There's no justification for that kind of organization other than to try to be used as a vehicle to keep the United States as the single hegemon in the world. And again, that era is over, in my view.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Is there anything else you would like to add to complete our discussion?
No, Foad, I appreciate the invite as always, and
You're
happy to
welcome.
do it.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.